And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the AEW Double or Nothing post show.
I am John Pollock, along with Wai Ting, and we're going to be here with you for as long as it takes to run through the AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view. We're going to be taking your phone calls and running through that entire card. How are you doing tonight, Wai?
Doing all right, John. Yeah.
Well, off the top, we are going to be getting to the Double or Nothing pay-per-view, but of course, we were finishing up Rewind to SmackDown on Friday night when the tragic news came down regarding Hana Kimura, and I wanted to have WH Park join us right off the top because that is clearly the biggest story going on right now in the wrestling industry, and to get the perspective of kind of the news circulating throughout Japan, I thought it'd be really great to have WH on. So you can always hear WH Park, a regular here at Post Wrestling on Post Pro Res. And WH, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So tell us a little bit about just how you heard about the news. Certainly, we saw the disturbing, tweets and images throughout the day on Friday, our time. But just tell us a little bit about how aware you were of those messages throughout the day, and then finding out like this horrific news involving Hana Kimura.
I didn't find out about it till like yesterday morning when I woke up to people sending me messages with screen caps of from Hana's Twitter about her self-harming herself and stuff, and I was really disturbed by this. But from there, I just had to run some errands. But by the time I came back home and checked my phone again, the news came out that she had passed away, that she died, and I was just like incredibly shocked. But this has been like news circulating not only in Japan but throughout the world. I think someone mentioned that it showed up on the BBC website front page and stuff like that, and there's a lot of talk about the kind of the similarities between her situation and what happened to some of the people who've appeared on the reality show Love Island and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question of just just over the past 24 hours, how big of a story that this has been. And I mean, you've seen outlets like Variety covering this. You mentioned the BBC. It's one of those stories that I think just because, and granted that we don't have all of the details official yet, but from what most people can gather from this, the circumstances behind it, it's going to be, to me, a story that's going to get a lot of attention, because this is a pretty prevalent issue, and I mean, it's a tragedy, but given that she was 22, this is, to me, going to be a pretty big news story that goes beyond just a professional wrestling story.
Oh, I definitely think it's getting a lot of mainstream press throughout Japan, because not only was she a wrestling star, but she's also a mainstream star because of her appearance on Terrace House, and the Terrace House kind of connection and the angle of, kind of Terrace House being involved somewhat in like the circumstances surrounding her death are definitely big news stories here in Japan. Terrace House is a very, very popular show in Japan as well.
What has some of the reaction been, at least, in regards to the discussion about perhaps depression or cyberbullying? Because I sense it's very different from how it might be here.
I get the impression, based on comments I've seen, that in some cases it might even be worse than like what we see on like English Twitter. A lot of the elements of her bullying was like people bullying her, was that a lot of it was focused on her race, because she's not fully Japanese. She's of mixed race. She's half Indonesian and half Japanese. And a lot of the comments directed toward her were xenophobic and racist. So that played a huge part in, like, I think, state and what happened.
From what you have gotten to see over there, WH, I mean, how is this being handled? Are they being like, in terms of like the media stories you've seen over there, are they kind of keeping it very quiet about the circumstances? I mean, how many more details have you heard over there versus, kind of what we've been exposed to here, which is, it's been very little beyond just, Stardom's announcement at this point.
They're speculating on how she might have died. I forget, using a hydroxy sulfide, something to that effect. That's kind of speculation there. There's speculation that her mother, Kyoko Kimura, might have been the first one to find out about this, and kind of those kind of details and stuff like that. It's just really heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah, it's it's a really shitty situation. Do you want to WH? For some people who might not be that familiar with her as a wrestler, maybe just kind of briefly talk about maybe a bit of her history and why she was such a special talent.
She's a second generation wrestler. Her mother, Kyoko Kimura, was a Joshi wrestler in Japan for a long time. Hana was exposed to wrestling at a young age because her mother would bring her to shows, and a lot of the wrestlers, women wrestlers in Japan, were very familiar with her because they would see her at shows, and they were friends with her mother. She started off training with Wrestle One, Keiji Muto's company, post All Japan, and then she would do freelancing work through Stardom, through Sendai Girls and other promotions, and then she finally landed a regular spot in Stardom, joining Oedo Tai faction with Kagetsu. And Oedo Tai is a faction that her mother Kyoko started. She then went to Mexico, and then after she came back to Mexico, she just became a completely new character and was really kind of like the jump starting of her rise as a star in the world of Joshi, and I think was gonna propel her to like a main event spot in Stardom before before the pandemic lockdown and before she passed away.
How do you see it? Granted, it's quite a strange period right now with no shows running, but like, how do you envision Stardom handling this? And just kind of the nature of which it was, like a suicide as well. Like, how do you think that this is going to be handled specifically by the company itself whenever they're back to running shows? I mean, it's very early, but what do you think is the move that Stardom makes in terms of how they address this with their audience?
I have no idea. Like, I don't know when wrestling is going to come back. I don't know when Bushi Road, either New Japan or Stardom, are going to have shows with fans in them. I would assume some kind of a tribute show is in order. That's probably something they're going to do, and probably try to get out the message of have anti-bullying messages out there. And I would hope behind the scenes that they're going to start maybe training the wrestlers, especially the really young ones, because you have to keep in mind that in Joshi, like, women start training to become wrestlers at a very, very young age. And I would hope part of that training involves like how to deal with social media, how to deal with bullying and negative comments and things like that. Like, I think that's severely lacking in any kind of entertainment, but especially for people in the public eye who are so young, it's really tough. And I think like, my speculation is like a lot of people who retire from wrestling in the Joshi world do so because they don't want to deal with some of the things that they see on social media directed towards them.
And I think that is maybe like something that many companies, all companies, can learn from, that if there are the resources available, almost having like that person that is almost like a counselor that's on the road for a lot of these people, and kind of breaking down that stigma of just keeping this all to themselves. That you're right when you're talking about a lot of young individuals that are being thrown into this as well. This is, it's a major issue when you've seen the response from so many performers today of what they have to go through. And I'm sure that across the board, there's a lot of terrible stuff that these performers have to be, that they have to read and see every day. But I would imagine especially for younger female wrestlers, I would imagine it's horrible, probably, what they see on a daily basis. And having at least kind of an outlet of where the companies can provide that help for someone. There's someone that is routinely there, that is on the road, that is a sounding board for these people, that are extending that help. I would think that would be maybe something to look into as well.
I think part of it for Hana specifically is that she had to deal with a lot of stuff, I'm sure, being of mixed race in Japan. It's not an easy thing to be half Japanese in Japan. It can be really tough for a lot of people growing up in the school systems here, being a bit different from everyone else. So I think that probably was a compounding factor. That's just my speculation, of course, but definitely, like, I really think there needs to be this issue of like looking at training to deal with the media, not just how to be wrestlers in the ring, but how to be personalities like in the public eye, whether that's on social media or appearing on television, on news shows and things like that.
I guess being familiar with her mainly as a wrestler in the public eye, what I'm trying to say is, I watched the show, of course, and I will tell you, watching the show, she seemed like somebody who was incredibly confident and did not really, I would say, exhibit any outward signs that she would do something like this at all. And that's to say she probably hit it incredibly well. I guess, from your perspective, WH, like, what did you think of her, I guess, as a persona? Did you see any signs of, like, anything really this on this level that would have bothered her like that?
No, not at all. I was so shocked to see the images of her self-harming herself because like you said, Wei, like she's always exhibited this extreme confidence in the ring as a public persona, and like I can't imagine myself ever being on TV or in the public eye in front of a crowd being as confident she was. Even this is before she even went to Mexico. After she came back from Mexico, she just exuded this superstar quality that you could sense was in her pre-Mexico, but after Mexico. And then she just became, this big star in stardom. She created her own faction, Tokyo Cyber Squad, and she was like kind of taking some of the younger wrestlers under her wing in that faction. I'm sure backstage as well. So you could tell that Bushiroad was very, very high on her. They put her in that dark tag match with Julia, Mayu Iwatani, and Arisa Hoshiki, and like you could tell those were the four that Bushiroad was really high on, and they were going to build the company going forward around those four, and she was going to be, I would say, if not number two, possibly number one outside of Mayu Iwatani.
I would say absolutely. Like it would be kind of 1-2 with like Mayu Iwatani at that point. And I mean, this comes days after as well. Hoshiki announcing her retirement as well. It's just such a whirlwind to look back that that was that tag match on January 4th as well. It's a really terrible story, and one that I think will be talked about for quite a while, just because of the circumstances and because of probably more details that may become available. But another issue, when someone takes their life in this way, it's that you are often left with a lot of questions and not always the answers that are going to be provided, because it's no one is going to fully know what those final 24 hours were like other than her.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for her family, her friends, and her coworkers in Stardom. I mean, a lot of the outpouring that comes out on social media from people in Japanese wrestling has been incredible. Nothing but positive things to say about her as a person, mainly. Like what a vibrant and happy person she was to them, and it's just really, really sad. I feel, like I think about it and it just makes me sad. It is truly a tragedy.
That's the only word you can use to describe it. I mean, 22 years old, it's heartbreaking. It's just a terrible story. I'm sure WH will be talking about this a bit more next weekend. We'll be back with a new post pro res, and thanks a lot just for jumping on with us. This was the biggest story, so I want to start off the top with it. So just thanks for carving out some time to come chat with us tonight.
No problem. Anything for you guys.
Thanks, WH.
All right. That is Thanks. WH Park, everybody. You can hear him, as always, on Post ProRes, and we will be having a new show out next weekend. So, Wade, just any kind of closing thoughts on that subject? I know we haven't talked really since last night. Today, just tons and tons of people talking about Hana Kimura and having, a lot of reactions, a lot of strong reactions to this story. A lot of people devastated, some very angry about this, and justifiably so. That's kind of been the tone throughout the day. Just shock, anger, and just a lot of sadness over this story.
Yeah. Honestly, it was coming off of, I would say, like a really tough week already, and especially like there's like a moment like last night where we were finishing the show and like finishing off the Owen review, where like I felt like at least a bit of positivity, like having talked about what Martha and Oj and Athena had gone through and how they really kind of persevered through all that to become better people. It felt like we were like ending the week on like a bit of a high note after all the terribleness, and then something like this, to me, this one hits the hardest. And I couldn't stop thinking about it today, and I probably will continue to think about it as as anybody who I guess was a follower of hers, whether it be through wrestling or through Terrace House, I think would would probably say the same. It's just it's tragic, and I think what she what she I guess was attempting to do is really to shine a light on just what goes on social media that I think a lot of us don't really comprehend, especially for somebody in her position, being a young woman in the public eye, and just having, just essentially like being putting yourself out there on a TV show that really reflects, I would say, much of who you might be, and it's absolutely an edited form of who you might be, and it can get misconstrued, for the purpose of the TV show, but it's just it results in I would say really really like difficult to manage types of comments and just criticism, especially for a young person who's only 22, really just starting to form her own identity herself. So I think I certainly am having myself like just conversations with myself about like why I'm on social media, what I'm getting out of it. I don't know. Like lately, it really feels like it's more harm than good.
And it's a certain element of like our generation that it is as normal or as much of a function of your daily life as a prior generation would treat like a phone or just something that is just so tied to your daily routine. And I go back to Mauro Ranallo, who got off all of social media last fall after that stuff that went down Survivor Series weekend, and said it was the best thing he ever did was just cutting off everything and not being on social media anymore. And for a lot of people, it's almost like this thing that you are so tied to. And I think you certainly have to weigh like what role it plays in your life. This is certainly an extreme case, but if it's something that is bringing you like consistently affecting your mood, you should not be leaving a computer screen in a worse state than when you sat down at it. And if that's something that's doing it for you, I think that's a conversation you probably should have with yourself about at least the amount of time you're spending on it. And again, like I don't want to like just tie this all up. Like I don't know all the things that was going through her mind on that final day. I don't know if we'll ever know, but certainly, this is, a part of that conversation, no doubt at all. And I think that, I think way a lot of people are probably having the same kind of conflict that you're having.
For sure. I guess if there's like, like one thought I suppose I've had is that, I think a lot of people right now are going around looking for like culprits and looking for people to blame. And I definitely think that a conversation should be had about what happened here and how it could have been prevented. At the same time, I would suggest people be very careful if they're going to name specific names, because it's a very complex situation, and I don't think you can necessarily say one person was responsible. It's just a terrible case either way, but be careful when how you manage your anger too, because a lot of people I understand are very angry, and they absolutely have the right to be, but we have to be careful about that too.
Yeah, that's well said. They did mention her on the pay-per-view tonight, along with Shad Gaspard. And, really touching story is that the Shad Gaspard GoFundMe, they hit the goal already. And there was a donation made for $40,000 that was just listed as CTC RIP, which was the acronym that was used when John Cena was, paired with Crime Time in 2008 that they utilized together. So there's a lot of speculation that it was John Cena that made that enormous donation. But I mean, it's wonderful news that the family is going to be able to receive that during this time.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. If it is him or whoever it is, yeah, that's amazing.
All right. Well, we're going to go into the Double or Nothing pay-per-view, which happened on Saturday night. After we review the show, we'll open up the phone lines and go through feedback from the forum as well. So if you want to get in, you can search for Post Wrestling on Skype, but do wait until we're done our review to call in, and we'll get to as many calls as we can. I slept away for 3.5 hours, and then I was outside today, and I got severely sunburnt.
Oh, that's nice. What were you doing? Were you on a boat or something?
No, we went out for a walk for like 2 hours by the lake. And my wife asked me, she's like, "Do you want sunscreen?" I was like, "Oh, I'll be fine."
Where'd you get
I was
burned?
not fine. Arms, neck. It's really not bad. I'd say severely, not severely, but I got sunburned. So I got that feeling. I feel sunburned.
I mean, it's almost like a nice feeling to have, I suppose, after being cooped up
kind
for
of.
a
I'm
long
not
time.
I'm not that out of a. Did you see those pictures today at
Bellwoods.
Trinity Bellwoods?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, Toronto. What are we doing? It was like Woodstock was happening at Trinity Bellwoods today, and a lot of people were very disappointed in our city today. And yeah, we did not look good today with that. Nonetheless, let us get into Double or Nothing. We had the buy-in pre-show hosted by Excalibur and Taz. Tony Schiavone interviewed Jake Roberts and Lance Archer inside this abandoned garage where Archer destroyed a toilet.
He did, yeah. I guess this was just a place that had old toilet.
Was this supposed to be a sign? The son of a plumber? I'm coming for you, Cody. The son of the plumber.
Well, we know that Cody destroyed a throne a year ago on that edition of Double or
So
Nothing.
Lance Archer destroyed a throne. Yeah. I'm sure that's actually kind of what the tie-in was. Maybe I should have gotten that quicker. That's why you're here, Wai.
No idea.
Private Party and Best Friends. It was a #1 contenders match for a future AEW tag title match. 15 minutes, 13 seconds they went. There was a screw up on the silly string spot that sometimes with Private Party, they do a lot of double team maneuvers and they can be hit and miss at times. We saw that in this, but overall, I thought they wrestled a very good match. I thought Best Friends had a very good match. I thought Best Friends looked very good throughout this. Private Party hit the G9 as a tribute to Shad Gaspard that the announcers brought up. That was a really cool spot to have in there. And then it ended with Chuck Taylor running Isaiah Cassidy into the post as the Best Friends hit strong zero, pinning Mark Quinn, and they will get the future title shot. So a predictable outcome, but I thought that, Taylor and Trent, they've had a really good run. And I was, in particular, I thought they were the ones that really stood out in this match.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was just a good way of setting up the next challengers. Best Friends have been two people that we've seen pretty consistently for a while, unlike Private Party. So, I thought this kind of put them right up into that spot. For me, I will say it's a style of match that is a bit tougher for me to get into without more of a crowd oohing and awing. And I really don't know what it is, but like over the past couple weeks, the audience that they do have at Daly's Place, it hasn't made as big of a difference to me as perhaps, when I initially heard them. And I don't know if that's just me getting used to it and comparing to, in my mind, what should be an even bigger reaction. But I'm sure it's better than not having a crowd at all.
I'm with you. And I think tonight I was trying to figure this out as well. And throughout this pay-per-view, like we're getting this crowd noise, but to me, watching, especially a pay-per-view as opposed to Dynamite, these pay-per-views I so associate with hot crowds. Mm-hmm. And the issue I think with these crowds that they do have is that in a weird way, when a crowd is down, they're not into something, but it does make up because then you can appreciate when they are into something. With this crowd, it's like this flat line where there's noise, but it's not because they're appreciably into something or not, or they're dead for something. They're always making noise. And it's almost like I'm playing a video game where it's just the track that is there. And that's kind of what I fell into with these AEW shows. You're not getting you're not getting a 10 from the crowd. You're never getting a 0, but it's like a 4 to a 5 straight through.
Yeah. there's no peak or valley. It's really just kind of one consistent thing. And the problem is when you only have so many people, I don't know if it's even possible to get up to 10. The loudest you might be able to get is a 5, unless you're turning from 0 to 5, and I don't think that's good either. I guess, partially maybe we have to ask Vitor Belfort how loud of a noise he was making.
Vitor Belfort was in the house along with Dan Lambert and Vicky Guerrero. Those were your VIPs in the crowd throughout the night. I wonder if Vicky had a voice by the end of the night. They did showcase her screaming at one point, but that was about it. But what a list of guests that we had.
Didn't know Vitor was a wrestling fan. I guess, is he training with Dan Lambert right now?
Oh God, he's been all over the place. I don't think he's not training there. But he's always been not always been, but he is based there in Florida.
Wow.
He's been all over the place. I mean, he's kind of talking about, fighting for one championship. We'll see. But he was there, so who knows?
Yeah, I did not expect to see his face.
Almost had about as much of a impact on this show as Mike Tyson did.
Yeah, well, I would say Tyson was a bit more jiffable by the end of the show.
The pre-show ended with an Arn Anderson promo saying that unlike toilets, Cody hits back, and he goes through all these what if scenarios. Dusty's legacy will live on forever. Part of that is through Cody, but Cody is starting his own legacy, and he does not doubt that Cody's going to win the big one tonight. So the pay-per-view begins, and they start off with this video where it's all of the baby faces, heels. They're all out of character, thanking the first responders. And there was also a graphic for Shad Gaspard here. And then later on in the show, they would note Hana Kimura's passing as well. But just kind of a nice start to it where it's like, okay, we're not playing our characters here. It's just everyone thanking the first responders. It was a nice way to start the show.
It was a really well done video, very good script, very well put together. And again, I guess, really taking the tactic that we see WWE, decide not to. And that's pretty much directly bring up what's going on in the world right now. WWE's philosophy seems to be more like, you guys hear about this stuff enough on the news. We're going to not mention it, even though, of course, we all know what's going on. But AEW's philosophy is to really kind of tackle it head on. This is what's happening in the world. We're going to, present it to you, and we're going to say that we are doing these shows, in response to, according to them, help you forget about it, as Tony Schiavone said.
So we didn't have this item last night because it was reported late, but Rey Fenix was out of the ladder match, so Joey Janela took his spot in this match, and we got a promo from him, as well as Kip Sabian and Christopher Daniels on behalf of Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, as the ladder match kicked things off. We had Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky as the first two entrants, and a gigantic timer on the wall counting down, and every 2 minutes a new member would enter. And they really didn't push this or even tease this, but the rules were that you could go poker chip as soon as the match begins, so it actually favors the people in there early. And the announcers brought up that, Kazarian and Sky could really just rig this whole thing, and they just decide, well, one of us can take it and let the other guy take it.
It really would have ended up being a better result for the two of them, but they decided not to do that.
If Scorpio Sky said, hey, let me take the chip, I get the title match, you get the first title shot at me.
Was that what they were trying to tease that they were going to do as they both reached for ladders?
They both reached for ladders, but then they threw the ladders away, and Jim Ross said, you know why they're not going to do that? Because of honor. They have too much honor to do that. I was like, okay. No, that's brains. That's if you and I were in this scenario way, that's 1,000% what you and I would do.
Speak for yourself. I have honor.
I'd throw the honor out the window. And I'd go for this chip immediately. So they abandoned the ladders, and they just had a 2-minute match. Kip Sabian was in next, which allowed Jimmy Havoc to become the unofficial entrant in this match, who was just assisting Kip. Darby Allin came in. This guy was out of his mind. He pulled out the guardrails, set up a ladder as a bridge between the ring and the guardrail. And then as Kazarian is set on the ladder, He grabs a skateboard, climbs up this gigantic ladder, and comes off down onto the skateboard, missing Kazarian, breaking the ladder in half, and then he just grabbed his shins and just screamed in pain. And we did not hear from Darby Allin for like another 10 minutes.
This spot was insane.
Oh my
like,
God.
It was just stupid. But you know, like I've seen some of Darby Allin skateboard videos, and this is his style. It's just like stupid jumps with no even real intention of like really landing them in a skateboarding sense, but just doing it. I definitely worried about him, but I mean, the guy, you know, this was meant to look stupid to take him out for the rest of the match, and the guy came back, so I guess you get them in while you're young and you can recover from them quickly. But geez, it was a really risky thing.
Yeah, and this match was kind of just broken up into each entrant kind of coming in and getting their sequence. Orange Cassidy came in. He came over to the broadcasters to ask how this match works. And it took him a minute just to get into the ring. And then he's just standing there, putting his hands in the sky to try and reach the chip, just doing all this comedy. Colt Cabana came in. He shoved Cassidy out of the ring. And Cabana's just reaching and just trying to win this thing. He's not doing any comedy stuff. Then Janela goes in, and he just runs wild. Cannonball off the stage, leaped over the guardrail onto going for Kip Sabian, and then enters the ring with a missile drop kick to Cabana. It's like, okay, Janela, you've got 30 seconds of focus in this match. Go. And that's what it was, because he really had no other involvement in this match other than this 30-second sprint.
It almost felt like, yeah, like, you know, here's a script we had for Phoenix. He was going to do all these dives. Let's get you to do them, Joey. And I'm sure Joey came up with them anyway. But like, yeah, just like use them, took advantage of this time, and certainly I think made an impression with his style. I also wanted to mention though, Cabana, before Joey Janela came in, took this like a pretty rough looking bump himself, you know, off of a ladder onto his back, crushing his fingers in the ladder in the process.
Oh, that's right, the finger spot. Yeah,
that one looked rough because like, man, yeah, I mean that's kind of what you expect from these matches though, you know. It's just people probably hurting.
I've got a thing about like just snapping or like injuring my fingers in something. Like I would much rather, I would do that Matt Jackson crossbody and risk a rib injury than something that like with like your fingers getting like caught up in a ladder or something. I'm just
I can, I mean, have you had your ribs injured?
I believe I've bruised my ribs.
Okay.
Never broken.
I'm sure they would both absolutely suck, but I can understand because
would.
your fingers, I mean, you use them all the time. And yeah, of course you use your ribs all the time too, but something about the fingers just like makes it look so...
Fingers and eyes. Man, that's where I get squeamish. Anyway, Luchasaurus came in and he hit Kazarian with a chokeslam onto the ladder. This is where Darby returns and did a code red off the middle rope to Luchasaurus. And our mystery entrant, number 9, outwalks Taz, who is not entering the match, but instead Brian Cage, who has now entered AEW. He's fresh off. He had bicep surgery earlier this year, and his contract had ended with Impact, so it looks like he's in now, and he's Taz's guy, and he immediately goes after Darby Allin. So this was Taz's payback, and it looks to be potentially something for Cage in the immediate is something with Darby Allin, but also having something bigger coming out of this.
Usually, like, you know, when they set up these mystery debut types of things, your expectations can go pretty crazy. For this particular one, because it was sort of buried within this like 9-person ladder match, I didn't think it was going to be like that big of a debut. And so to me, somebody on the level of Brian Cage, in my opinion, actually exceeds the expectations I had for a debut like this. We're talking about certainly somebody that they are considering a future main eventer, if not an immediate main eventer. And making his debut here, I thought was it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, I mean, he will work really well with a lot of guys in this company, and Darby Allin is one of them. He comes out, he breaks a ladder like in his hands as he comes out, and he is attacking Darby, spun him off his shoulders with what they called the F5000. Cage then climbs the ladder with Cassidy holding onto his back, and the rest are all trying to pull him down. And it takes everyone to overpower Cage. They take him to the floor and bury him underneath a barricade, ladders, and then get the large, giant poker chip that Jon Moxley stood on top of last year. They just got that giant chip and placed it on top of Brian Cage to try and bury him underneath this thing.
It looked incredibly heavy. So either those guys were like, working all of us and pretending it was just heavy, or this thing was like really, really, really awkward and really massively heavy. It took 4 dudes to be able to carry this thing.
So with Brian Cage kind of taken care of, Penelope Ford ran out for a spot. Then Marco Stunt came in with a mini ladder and did an assisted chokeslam with Luchasaurus onto Orange Cassidy. It took all of Jim Ross's might to not just completely scoff at this.
He probably had flashbacks to the Hornswoggle stuff.
It was. I don't know if this was this late in the match. I don't know if this was really necessary, but
I guess they all needed
that was the involvement. I guess so. Sky and Kazarian are fighting on the ladder together, but they get dumped off by Luchasaurus. This is when Cage emerges from the rubble, and him and Luchasaurus do this crazy athletic sequence, ending with a power bomb to Luchasaurus on the ladder. Cage then hits Allen with the drill claw. Taz is back out, and Cage places Darby on top of a ladder. He lifts it up like military presses it and dumps Allen to the floor. Darby is gone, and goes up the ladder, takes the poker chip. 28 minutes and 28 seconds. Brian Cage gets the chip, so he will get a future AEW title shot, and left with Taz.
Yeah, for a ladder match with a roster like this, I think it lived up to expectations, and my expectations were that these guys were going to do a bunch of really stupid things, and entertaining stupid things, and they managed to do it. I mean, there were certainly a lot of moments where I was definitely cringing, like, man, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing with your futures? But, unfortunately, that's sort of like part of the expectation. Some of it was, unfortunately, I thought executed pretty sloppily. But, I mean, these are supposed to be car crashes, and they're not always going to look great. I thought they did a tremendous job, though, with Brian Cage in his debut. They paired him up and had him best people like a Luchasaurus, so you immediately know where he stands in terms of like power level. They had like a bunch of guys bury him with shit, and they of course had him win the whole thing afterwards. So if the intent of this whole thing was to promote your new guy in Brian Cage immediately, I thought they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, to me that's the objective. In terms of a ladder match, I thought there was some creative stuff, a lot of insane stuff. What didn't really hit me as like, a top tier ladder match, but they did a really great job with Brian Cage. I think that losing Phoenix, you lost a lot in this match. But that said, there was a lot of, if you like crazy ladder stuff, there was a lot of that in this.
I know what you mean though. Like to me, some of the best car crash types of ladder matches have a certain flow to them. This one did.
This felt more rigid. It was just like, okay, it's like, this guy. It just felt more kind of manufactured as opposed to kind of involving different people. It was like 2 people would square off. They had their thing, cut to the next 2, and so on and so on. It's like we never incorporated the 9 like flowing in and out beyond like working against Brian Cage, and it just kind of felt a little bit more rigid would be the word.
Sure, yeah.
MJF along with Wardlow versus Jungle Boy.
They also around this time inform us that Dustin Rhodes is not currently present in the arena for his match with Shawn Spears.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Well, more to come. Lots of drama on the Dustin Rhodes front. MJF, early on, grabs his balls while staring at Jungle Boy. Tony Schiavone calls this sick. Jim Ross says it's blasphemous. Blasphemy.
Okay.
They did some cool stuff early on. Like they tied each other up by the legs and then did these like balanced on their heads and exchanged slaps. And this was great.
The handstand slapping spot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was very good.
I wonder if you could pull this off in a video game. Have they incorporated that in
a video game? I would say half of that ladder match should have stayed in a video game, I think.
You think you could throw in a skateboard jump in a ladder game?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. MJF then gets Irish whipped into the corner and his knee buckles. And Dr. Michael Sampson comes into the ring and boom, MJF is back up and he attacks Jungle Boy. This was their Fit Finlay spot. And he attacks Jungle Boy's arm. And for the rest of this match, Jungle Boy is pretty much fighting with one arm. He did a really great job of like adjusting his offense and selling this arm. MJF was fantastic throughout this as a heel and just breaking down the arm. Excalibur, maybe my favorite note of the night. He says that Jungle Boy, because he's injured the left arm, he says, well, Jungle Boy is right-handed, meaning the left arm is the lead arm out in front because of the orthodox stance.
Wow.
Just right out there.
All right.
It's a giant target. They go to the edge of the apron, and MJF, a reverse Rana, and just tumbles to the floor. This looked nuts. MJF then gets set up in the corner, and Jungle Boy was on top as MJF grabbed Aubrey Edwards and knocked her into the ropes, and Jungle Boy falls down. He recovers, hits this Liger bomb off of the turnbuckle, only gets a 2 count, and then MJF starts dropping down elbows to the injured shoulder. There's a series of roll-ups ending with MJF on top with kind of a modified European clutch, and he catches Jungle Boy. They gave these two 17 minutes and 25 seconds, and I thought this match was great.
I did too. Like, I knew it was feeling long, but at the same time, I was not bored at all because I felt like it consistently built at a good pace and like felt deserving of 17 minutes.
And it didn't even take a long time. Like within 2 minutes, I was like, these guys have a tremendous chemistry together. Like It is like this could be a long, long rivalry in AEW of this babyface and heel that could go on. They brought up their ages 24 and 22. Mm-hmm. Like these guys, I just thought these two knocked it out of the park. It's two of the best matches I've seen each have. I
agree. I feel like it was, whether or not intentional when they originally booked it. I think, the amount of time and the type of match that these guys had, if it was, to me, a match that was meant to showcase the future of this company, and these two absolutely did great. I continue to be really impressed by MJF, not just on the microphone, but in ring, on a show where everybody typically works as fast as possible. Like his slower, more methodical pace, but like really like solid, like technically everything looks good. It really stands out, and it indicates to me he's not a wrestler who simply thinks about moves. It was like full of good psychology, good selling, great action. I feel like this will definitely be a match we'll probably be revisiting on some sort of like major retrospective about these two and their rivalries in the future.
I think these two had a really good match on the Jericho Cruise.
Oh yeah,
I think I'd heard that. So anyway, this was great. Like these two could be great rivals. And MJF, I mean, going over, like it seems like he is. You have several opponents lined up now for Jon Moxley, and MJF's up there as well. You've got Brian Cage. That's something you could pay off down the road. But MJF would be the other one right there.
Would it be time, or do you feel like they want to like cook MJF a bit more before they, have him challenge for a championship? Because unless you're going to do the title switch, should he challenge right now?
Unless you have like some story for MJF that diverts him away, it's kind of tough to not go that direction now because, and granted, the next pay-per-view is not till September. So it's not like they have to come back next month with it. But the fact that they've been building up, the fact he has one loss this year, and it was in a 4-way where he hasn't been pinned this year. They have been hitting that really hard. So
MJ is suggesting MJF versus Cody. What do you think now that Cody has the other belt?
You could do that. I just think you do need a storyline reason of why he is not the number one contender right now, I think, at this point for the title. But you could do that, I guess. Like he has the win over Cody, that there's a natural to go that direction with Cody as well.
He could say, I deserve, and I probably have already earned an AEW championship match, but I'd rather beat this guy again for that belt.
I mean, to be fair, MJF never rose at any kind of point like, why wasn't I even in this tournament?
Yeah, true. He was stuck in New York, that's why.
Oh. Cody and Lance Archer was the next match here. And Mike Tyson brought out the not yet completed TNT Championship. They mentioned due to the pandemic, it's not done. There's still some gold plating, which I guess was good to know because this belt looked not great.
By far, like the worst belt in AEW. I mean, if we're judging by first impressions of this supposedly incomplete belt, it looks like a cheap toy. I mean, that's the nicest I could really put it. The fact that it's incomplete, I think, really allows them for a complete overhaul because I don't even know what sort of gold plating they could put on this thing to make it look that much better, but we shall see. At least they're honest about it. Really unfortunate. You know, this was supposed to be like a big, like, reveal.
Maybe they're going to take some TNT to this championship belt.
Wow.
So Mike Tyson brings out the title, and then Lance Archer storms out of there with Jake Roberts, kills a dude, and Tyson is just there, like, laughing away at all of this. Like, he's just in Mike Tyson land.
I guess, yeah. Is this Mike Tyson? Is this Mike Tyson land? Not knowing what was going on.
He seemed to be pretty chilled out in the corner.
See, I've heard that he is actually a fan.
Oh, he's a huge wrestling fan.
Certainly didn't look like
from childhood.
Certainly didn't look like it. I mean, is he an AEW fan?
I don't know if he's an AEW fan. He was an enormous WWF fan. Right. His like Bruno Sammartino was one of his heroes when he was a kid. At the
start here, the dude couldn't have looked less interested.
By the end of this, I hope he came cheap. That would be my
no, this was not WrestleMania 14. This was not Austin Tyson, unfortunately.
This was not him guest hosting Raw.
No.
I mean, at least someone took a punch on that Raw. Like Jericho took the punch. I mean, there was nothing to this. I don't know what the point was. Like, the guy did no promo for it. Like, he did no promotion for this in the week leading up to it. It got no publicity.
I think we definitely built it up in our minds. The moment we saw, oh, Mike Tyson's going to be on this pay-per-view.
They built it up. I mean, it was just, yeah, I don't know. I guess it was just to have someone to present this incomplete title. So what, the real title? Who's going to present the real title? Is it going to come back?
Yeah, I don't know.
Look at Lennox lose.
I don't know if you can get bigger than Tyson. Floyd.
So, well, yeah.
Floyd will present
Floyd's,
the bat.
The bat or the boxer? Yeah. Archer nearly finishes Cody immediately, but he rolls to the floor, and then he's going for the EBD claw, but Cody tries for a submission. Cody Cutter gets hit with a pounce in midair, and then it's all Archer on offense. They cut to Tyson here, and this is the meme that will live on forever of him yawning as they cut to him.
Really unfortunate. And, I see a lot of hate going around for the camera guy. Camera guy has nothing to do with it, okay? Like, he points the camera at Mike Tyson for the entire match, and then... And even if you're to blame the director, it's just unfortunate timing. I don't think...
Yawns are unpredictable. I mean, you can't... If, cut to camera 2 and the guy's, just starting a yawn, and...
To me, there's nobody to blame.
That happens.
But Mike Tyson and his sleep schedule, okay? Because the man, if you're getting paid to, be ringside to present the belt, I would hope that you would know that you're going to be on camera the entire time and that you were supposed to at least, look enthused. And clearly, they probably wish that they gave that direction to Mike Tyson, because somewhere in the middle of this match, you could definitely tell that occurred, because the change in Mike Tyson's reaction between this section to later on in the match was night and day. And I would almost say, if he was at a 0 before, he was really hamming it up to be like a 14 later on, and it just felt so disingenuous.
So Cody does a sequence of the bionic elbow, Dustin's final reckoning before Crossroads, but Archer kicks out. And then he hits a stinger splash.
Yeah.
Which is identified as such by the announcers.
What do you make of that?
I think Cody just trying to have fun.
Okay.
Archer was walking the ropes as Jake is dealing with referee Bryce Rems. Arn gets on off balance, prompting Cody to hit the scariest looking reverse superplex I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, very
Jesus
high angle
Christ.
onto Lance Archer's head. Obviously he seemed fine afterwards, but yeah, rough.
So then Paul Turner runs out and tells Remsburg about Arn. Tyson confirms that, and Anderson gets ejected, which prompts bullshit. And Jake, for whatever reason, he gets ejected as well, although he just comes back with a bag with the snake inside of it, but we never see the snake. Tyson gets up into Jake's face, takes off his shirt, because I guess it was hot here in Daly's place, and the blackout gets blocked. Cody hits 2 crossroads. It was a little clumsy, but hit the 2 crossroads and pins Archer. 21 minutes, 9 seconds. Cody is the new TNT champion. And then this is why they paid Mike Tyson. What the payoff was, we got to see Tattoo meet Tattoo. Cody.
Two of the more famous, I would say, questionable tattoo choices in combat sports together in the same scene. Yeah, it makes total sense.
You know who would have been most pissed about that tattoo is this action figure company that we saw the ad for later tonight that have this line coming out in August, and you've got the Cody figure without the tattoo.
So they didn't add it on, eh? I didn't check, but
they showed an image of the figure and it didn't have the tattoo
hopefully
on it.
by the time,
unless they do an updated version.
Well, maybe it's like just a sticker sheet, they can include in the packages, and you can just tape it on yourself. Or maybe there are people that are out there that prefer Cody without the tattoo, that they'd be happy that they didn't include it.
Yeah, for the video game, it'll be the Awful Decisions DLC pack.
Very good. I thought this match started off fine. I thought they were telling a really decent David Goliath story. I think Lance Archer is just like really spectacular. Great intensity. Feels special, when he's out there. But unfortunately, at some point, it just kept going and going with Archer beating on Cody. And I don't know if it was the
21 minutes.
How long?
21 minutes.
Yeah, right. And I mean, the thing is, for a title match of this stature, I wouldn't even say that was such a bad, I think, allotment of time. But I don't know what it was, if it was just maybe them staying on Archer beating on Cody for too long. I can definitely tell you, seeing Mike Tyson yawning did not help my own, I think, perception of the match, because it just made it look like this dude was bored. And then, I mean, that combined with, I would say, what we were talking about earlier with the crowd noise being kind of flat, whether or not they could really help it. I definitely found this one drag a little bit.
Yeah, and this would be, to me, a consistent thing throughout some of these middle matches was a lot of time given to some matches that I think would have been a little more effective if they just shaved off some minutes. This being one of them. And yeah, I mean, it was brought up, the fact, Cody winning his first title in AEW, you would love to have had a crowd there, but I mean, we can only make that argument so many times. Yeah. It's like, there are no crowds.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, there's every single thing on the show would have been better with a crowd, but what are you going to do? Like, we're not going to do angles. We're not going to do big things during this whole period. No. It's, I get that sentiment, but it's, to me, if it's comes down to, well, God, we need to have fans for Cody's first title win. It's like, yeah, not an ideal period that we're in right now.
Right. That part didn't bother me as much, to be quite honest with you. I felt like if they had a solid, really 15-minute match that was just like bell to bell spectacular, I would have looked at that moment as a pretty big moment. But instead, like, after feeling that drag, the moment this match ended felt more like it was like, okay, finally, thank goodness. It was almost like a merciful ending rather than me being really happy by the end. I also felt like the stuff with the managers and Tyson, I thought it was really hokey and kind of sloppily done. And when you're talking about maybe a performer who's not really a wrestling performer like Mike Tyson, I guess you're really asking a lot, and you're going to have to, like, I don't know. But even the stuff with Arn and Jake, I guess I didn't really get into it. It just felt really, really hokey to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're still continuing that thing with Arn, like they did prior, where, he does something that nearly costs. He's a liability for Cody in his corner.
You think they're actually still telling that story? Like,
well, they weren't up until, that spot, and he gets ejected and costs Cody by, getting, he's.
But see,
he's the one with the game.
Didn't necessarily cost Cody, though. If anything, it made the match a bit more of a fair fight. But yeah, you're right. It could be. Or I actually just kind of saw it more as them just wanting to do something to involve Tyson. I mean, if it was as simple as just pointing, I guess.
Yeah. Mike, what did you see? Yeah, he got involved.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. So Tyson presented the title. That was it.
He's in great
Alex
shape.
Marvez.
Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, he's for 53. Look at him. That's quite something. Then we had a character, Dr. Michael Sampson, who has an update on Britt Baker. She has a partial LCL tear, an anterior tibia fracture, as well as a tendon tear. And then what is the timetable going to be? Britt Baker is going to announce that on Wednesday, as Sampson adds that of all the patients, she is the worst.
I would say this doctor is pretty unprofessional to air out his grievances with a patient on TV.
Yeah,
like
does this violate like HIPAA laws to talk about how a patient's attitude has been towards you in her consultations?
I would have to think so. I would hate if my doctor, like, just, when asked about my medical status, just went on about how much he disliked me, how difficult I was.
This is where Britt Baker makes Michael Sampson like her Tony Schiavone this week and cuts a promo about, why don't you let a real doctor speak? Okay.
There you go.
And runs down Sampson.
I think we're gonna get that. So, what do you think is going on here? Like, how long are they going to keep Britt Baker out? I mean, I guess in either case, she's gotten to the point where she's developed this character that she's so good at. Even while injured, you can actually take advantage of it and still keep her on TV. And in fact, make her even more compelling, perhaps.
I would give her an interview segment.
Yeah, sure.
It's like a good version of the Moment of Bliss.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. And think of the puns.
I'll come up with a name. Oh man, there's. I don't want to just throw out one. Oh man, Tooth Be Told. I'm not gonna top that. There's no topping that, man. That's pretty good.
Please don't use that.
Penelope Ford, Chris Statlander, Kip Sabian came out on crutches with his knee all taped up from the ladder match, and Statlander took her down and did the cartwheels around the ring. Ford grabbed her finger to try and bite the boot finger.
Yes, the boot finger.
Did you also catch the most impressive recipient of the boop on Saturday?
No, I didn't. Who?
Vitor Belfort.
Oh, he got it.
Received the.
Wow.
He got booped. Yes. Statlander hit a suicide dive and nearly crashed into the guardrail, taking out Ford and Sabian. And then in the ring, Ford does the Matrix maneuver, hits a stunner, and then comes off the turnbuckle and just had this messy looking Hurricane Rana. It seems like there's always one spot in there, like with Ford or Chris Statlander in one of their matches. This was it. But then she went right into the handspring, was caught off the ropes, and into the slam and Big Bang Theory. Statlander wins this in 8 minutes and 8 seconds. I would say outside of the Hurricane Rana botch that they had a fine match, and it was kind of in a tough spot following that 21-minute match with Cody. It's right in the middle, and there's no story to this at all.
Yeah. I mean, this is really a match that, was born out of unfortunate circumstances, and I think the two did the best that they could. It wasn't a match that really did a whole lot for me. There were moments where I felt like their inexperience showed, but I come out of this, continuing to be really impressed by Penelope Ford. I think she's got great presence. She's certainly showing improvements pretty much in all areas. But this match in particular wasn't really one that left much of an impression on me.
Yeah, these matches back to back, this and the next one, almost felt like a kind of just a cool down period. Sean Spears comes out and he's in a suit, and he asks where Dustin is. He says he's at home washing his tights. And then Dustin's music starts playing, and he's all scared, but then he laughs because it was all a ploy. He had set up the music to play to get everyone's hopes up, the non-existent fans to get excited.
He just wants to hear that brain stew.
Yeah. He wants Aubrey Edwards to ring the bell and start the count. And then as she's counting, the music starts again. Brandy walks out, and then Dustin's back comes into the shot from the cameraman inside the ring. And I thought that was like a cool reveal that he was there.
Yeah.
Looked good. and we just get a match, which was pretty much Rhodes beating the shit out of him, stripping him of his suit all the way down to his underwear, where the cameraman has to zoom in on his crotch, where there's a photo of Tully Blanchard on the guy's dick.
Yeah, you're not joking. John didn't just make that up in the recap. Yeah. You know, I felt like this was the most WWE style of comedy type of match that we've seen in AEW thus far. I there are moments where I can really appreciate WWE style comedy, but this certainly wasn't it. And to see it within AEW, I was somewhat disappointed here. I'm not really sure why this match needed to occur other than to fill time on the show. It, to me, did nothing for Dustin. Listen, like, Dustin is sort of like the uncle that drops by once in a while. He's hardly somebody that I feel like is in need of any sort of rehabbing. The whole retirement deal, I don't think anybody bought. It just felt like it was kind of like, you know, just kind of thrown out there. And you should really be more careful with retirement stipulations, because I don't think anybody bought that one. The return really did not feel emotional or anything at all. And like Spears, like, he's worked so hard to reinvent himself into this like very serious threat, and doing something like this, I thought, just kind of dragged him more down to that comedy undercard heel level.
Yeah, I think in this role, you have to be really great in the comedy role and a really like really witty, really funny, and that makes it work. And I don't see Spears in that role, at least not yet, from the segment this Wednesday and tonight. You know, it was a win for Dustin. It was short. That's the best I can say about it. It was, you know, not much of a match. 4 minutes. Dustin wins with the reckoning.
Stripping somebody down to their underwear, I feel like should come almost at the end of a feud. And I suppose in their minds, this was the end of a feud, but I can't even recall what sort of feud these two had. What was this match even born out of? Something in the tournament?
The segment on Wednesday.
That was it, right? He just decided to call out Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, and Jim Ross said, yeah, they're going to have a match. Why the hell not?
So, you know, I don't know. If somebody's going to ask me to like strip to my underwear on TV, I would hope that it would have a bit more kind of lasting effect and a bit more reason.
Then we had the announcement, All Out will take place on Saturday, September the 5th. Were you surprised that they announced this for September? Presumably. I mean, no location was announced. That's notable.
Right. I mean, I think no matter what, they would want to have another pay-per-view show. Simply, like, that's just their only way of making income at the moment. So I think the date that they could pretty much bank on. Whether or not it'll have a live audience, that certainly remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally that would be the Chicago show, but I mean, who knows? They just announced September 5th, All Out. Then they had a graphic for Hana Kimura, and Excalibur called it a senseless and stupid thing, instructing people to be nicer to everybody. Nyla Rose, Hikaru Shida, no DQ, no countout for the AEW women's title. Rose started off with the kendo stick, but Shida was able to wrestle it away. And the first big spot was Rose putting her through a poker table on the floor. And then Shida would have her moments of offense, but Rose would consistently just beat her down. We saw the usage of the poker chips as well, including Shida hip tossing Rose onto one of them. And then she leaped off one of the poker chips, hitting Rose with a flying knee while she was against another poker chip that fell over. And that looked pretty cool.
Did look cool. Yeah, good use of those. Do you think they were the same ones from the year prior?
Yeah, I mean, you don't get rid of stuff like that, do you?
Yeah,
I mean,
guess not.
Who would throw those away? Hell of a thing to have to transport, but I would
definitely like maximizing your value.
From there, Rose caught her with a power slam back in the ring, hit that flying knee off the top, and then Rose brought in a table. They battled, and it ended with a power bomb to Shida as she goes through the table, only gets a 2 count. And this was when, like, there was a point where this match, I was like, man, this is turned into a really good match. And they went to me several minutes long, but they did have a big finish at the end. It was like a bunch of kickouts for Nyla Rose and like a 2,000 running knees from Hikaru Shida. She hit an avalanche Falcon Arrow. That was one of the near falls. And then she kicks out of the running knee, hits another one, and this time Nyla Rose stays down. 16 minutes, 47 seconds. I would have cut a little bit of time off of this, but overall, I think they over-delivered here. And for Nyla Rose, I think that this was a very big match for her, and I like the direction of Shida as champion.
I like the booking, actually. Yeah, I mean, Nyla Rose is fantastic. I feel like she's really leveled up her confidence and charisma this year. She's already there, and I can certainly see her winning the belt back sometime later this year, just as like somebody to be able to chase. But tonight, I think Shida was the right person to win. She's been building so much momentum, and I think
and she seems so genuinely happy to, like, her celebration was amazing with this title. Like, she was so happy.
Like, in her losing tonight, it wouldn't have like ruined her, but at the same time, like, why? What, you have way more to gain by having her win, establishing her at this level. It felt like a win for her would do more than it would to just keep it on Rose. So I feel like, the match itself was a pretty solid war. I don't disagree with you that if it was shorter, it might have been better. But I think much of that has to do with just the environment. And, a match that otherwise might have seemed perfectly fine for its length can feel longer without the peaks and valleys of that crowd reaction. But, Shida's babyface fire was really strong here. She was really great.
Yeah. I think, the women's division has been probably the rockiest part of AEW since its launch. And I think that this you would file in one of the examples of, a match in the women's division on a stage that delivered.
I want to say as well, I thought her interview on the earlier video that they probably aired on the countdown, she was great. I want to say Nyla, it was fantastic in that video as well. Like her charisma is really coming out. But Shida, she did a great job, I thought, speaking with authenticity, doing an English interview. Like she had some lines where like she was like kind of getting like a little deep and like it made you really want to cheer for her. So, the language barrier is not something that'll keep her from doing more interviews like the way, unfortunately, somebody like Riho, it might have kept her from talking more on AEW TV. But Hikaru Shida, I'm actually really excited to see how they book her as a babyface champion.
Yeah, it was weird. I was watching an interview. Did you notice the letters at the bottom of the screen?
It was like weird hieroglyphic drawings. I couldn't tell. Not used to that.
Yeah, it was like it matched what she was saying, and in case you were not able to decipher what she was saying, they wrote it out for you, and it was like everyone understood it. I was like, what a concept. It's amazing. So the announcers then got really like serious here, and they gave this speech about how everyone in wrestling is part of this family, and notes that this entire period people are going through, it's been a very difficult week, and like there was no like this wasn't setting up anything. It was just like taking a moment to just give like a nice message to everybody that we know this has been like a really tough period, and this week especially has been very hard for wrestling fans, and we hope you're enjoying the show. Like, I thought this was like, if I like just ordered this show, like that was like a nice thing for them to just do that you wouldn't necessarily see on many broadcasts, that they'd carve out some time just to dedicate to this. It was only like 60 seconds, but I thought it was like a nice message from the announcers.
Felt like they were speaking from the heart and like speaking unscripted. Yeah. There are moments like where the TV person in me wonders if they were just covering because they had to clean up the ring or something like that, or prepare some sort of like pyro.
Such a cynic. Guys, just vamp for a 60. Yeah. We did get smiles on people's faces from Excalibur, so AEW did adopt it. That sets up Jon Moxley and Brodie Lee. I just gave such a nice recap of that. And like you probably are right from this hardcore match that they had to clean up and just kill some time here. But nonetheless, I thought it was a very nice message. Jon Moxley, Brodie Lee for the AEW Championship. You know what I liked right from the get-go is that they put in the security wall in there to separate them. I always like when wrestling uses the security wall and you don't overdo it, but save it for a big feud.
I'm actually not used to seeing it. Where would they have gotten this from?
I mean, they've used this in the past, like with Austin McMahon segments, or just it's like certain feuds where you would just, you have two hated rivals and you need the wall of security to keep them separate.
Not at the beginning of the match, though.
Well, I mean, you had to do the introductions and everything. They wanted to do this as a formal title match. They're not just going to come in, because naturally They should, like, they're telling you this is a big grudge match, and they just want to get their hands on each other, and they're not going to just stand there and wait for the introductions to attack one another.
Right.
So immediately they just start brawling to the ring and brawling to the floor rather, and they're on the floor for a long time. As Shivani notes, that Paul Turner is giving them a lot of leeway because it is playoff time.
I guess a pay-per-view constitutes playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. This was there was a lot of leeway in this match for a match that had no stipulations beyond a regular wrestling match. Moxley sets up the steps by the timekeepers area, but then he gets taken away from Harper and gets drop kicked. But then they move on back to the steps, and Moxley back body drops Lee through the timekeepers' equipment. I can't tell you how many times I wrote Harper in my notes by mistake.
Yeah. I feel like I've
not
gotten used to like Lee or just Brodie Lee by this point, but I mean, it's going to be really tough with the revival.
So Moxley gets caught on the floor, took a half Nelson suplex through these this display of a deck of cards that they had there ringside all night. Then they get onto the stage. Moxley throws a miniature poker chip that they note is made out of fiberglass. And Moxley hits the paradigm shift, and both crash through the ramp, like it's Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow in the ring in ECW. But this was on the stage, and the officials have to go check them out. Moxley emerges first, then Brodie Lee comes out, where he is all bloody, or at least tried his best to be all bloody.
He looked pretty bloody to me.
He had the cut there. It was fine. It was, so he goes for a discus lariat,
and it's snob.
Well, I mean, this is not top level blood. Let's be honest. He hits the paradigm shift. Brodie Lee kicks out at 1. Moxley then attacks the cut, and they're just going all out here. He's dropping elbows on the cut. Another paradigm shift. Lee kicks out at 2. So Moxley goes for a bulldog choke. Moves to the back, gets the rear naked choke. Even though Extreme Couture is not in operation right now, those lessons are drilled into Moxley. He gets the rear naked choke, only 1 hook applied, and Brodie Lee goes out. And Moxley retains at 15 minutes, 28 seconds.
I'm sure Dan Lambert would have loved this finish.
Oh, man.
Probably shouting from ringside. Very physical match. They worked really hard, a lot of big spots. Didn't do a whole lot for me. And I don't know if it was just simply by this point, again, what we were saying about the lack of the peaks and valleys kind of getting to me for especially longer length matches. But it just felt like, I think, an extended hardcore brawl that for some reason never really gripped me emotionally.
I liked the match. It was not one that was high on my priority list going into this show. Like, I didn't have high expectations for this match. I would say it exceeded those. I liked the ending. I thought the last 5 minutes were the strength of the match. But this was certainly not the wrong placement. This show could not have ended with this. And I could have argued that Cody and Lance Archer could have been in this spot as well. But I guess they wanted to put this title match late enough in the show. I thought it was fine. This would not be a program that I think you would have the legs to get another match out of. Maybe they do something on television, but to me, this was Moxley's moving on. This was a one-match program.
It was a tricky, finish to try to book because neither man could really afford a straight loss. But they did the Brodie passed out. He didn't tap out, so I guess
and survived the paradigm shift twice.
Yes. So I guess he can hang his head on that. And I personally
go feud with Marco Stunt.
I really do feel like there's certainly work to be done with this Dark Order thing. Since Brodie Lee's debut, I mean, he's been fine, but it certainly isn't a gimmick that I think feels like it's a top level gimmick right now.
You know what the worst stuff is with this character? It's like this company can't even decide if they want this to be a Vince McMahon joke or not. Because that was our first impression of him, was a Vince McMahon knockoff. That's our first impression with the steak and all of that stuff. And then you listen to any interview with Brodie Lee, and he's saying, "Oh, it's not about Vince McMahon. It's more so like I'm trying to be like a serial killer. I can't remember what the terminology is, but he's trying to distance it from Vince." And then this match starts, and they're reading his bio, and they're like, "He hates people that sneeze, and he hates people that yawn. He's not in control of them." It's like, make up your mind of what you're doing with him, and if you don't want the Vince McMahon comparisons, then eliminate them, because that was everyone's first impression of it, and that's kind of what this character.
Well,
That
Mr.
was
Brodie. I mean, that in itself is a Mr. McMahon.
It's such a
Yeah.
contradiction. Like it's like I don't know, and it's not that funny either. Like, okay, it's maybe hilarious to guys that have worked for Vince McMahon, but to the audience at large, it's not like it's this great parody of Vince McMahon. It's not like it's this entertaining version of Vince McMahon. It's like you're just taking elements that we're all supposed to get because you're assuming we've all had these meetings with Vince McMahon where he does all this weird shit that most of your audience, that's not going to land with them. So I think they really need to just pick a direction and go with it. I don't think this is a guy that is not talented, but it just seems the character has been. I don't know if they could necessarily nail down what this character is.
He's an incredibly talented performer who's walked into a role and a gimmick that I think Stu Grayson has done a tremendous job of, but Evil Uno and Stu Grayson have done tremendous jobs with, but now he's basically having to assume it and take over it for it without, I think, a real clear idea of what type of character he's supposed to be playing. And I don't think the answer is to do a Vince McMahon impression. I think there are definitely like negatives to just, being a billionaire Ted type of like comedy thing. But he needs to
like take some influence from like a dark cult leader or a serial killer. Like, God knows we're seeing cult leaders on WWE that are being terribly done. Wrestling could use someone doing like a really dark and convincing cult leader. Go that direction. Find influence outside of wrestling.
I agree, John, but that's also incredibly difficult to do, especially if you're not a trained actor, especially if you don't really have like the resources of the sort of like production that I think is required for something like that. Comedy isn't necessarily a bad way to go about it. What I'm trying to say is you don't have to do a Vince McMahon knockoff, but you definitely have to find a replacement, a set of characteristics that are just fun to watch on TV, or at least scary to watch on TV, that make you feel something. And his latest appearances on TV, unfortunately, have not achieved that.
Moxley just warns, for anyone out there, keep your distance from my title. And the announcers say, well, Brian Cage is not going to keep his distance after winning the casino ladder match earlier tonight. So they were actively pushing, and that should be an interesting meshing of styles together. I think it's an interesting direction to go.
Fresh matchup. As far as I know, it might be their first time. Is that something they do immediately?
I think you could save time and do Cage and Darby first. That seems to be the immediate one. Let Cage kill someone first.
Did they say like how this chip thing works?
Just that he can he gets a future AEW title shot. They never put like any time.
It's not like a Money in the Bank type of situation.
It's a poker chip. I mean, if you have a chip, I can go and cash it in anytime I want, right?
It'd be awkward to carry around like a Captain America shield.
But you can do it.
Okay.
So
that would be unique. I mean, AEW doesn't have that type of thing, but
how about Taz in this role? Do you like Taz being used in the heel manager?
I really like it. I really like it. I mean, Taz, of course we know he's a great promo, but I don't recall ever seeing him in a heel manager role all this time. So I think, he'll have a whole lot to offer. I mean, the guy plays pretty much a heel anyway, if you like listen to his podcast or anything like that. So I really think he's perfect for the role.
Yeah, they briefly did it when he came into TNA with Samoa Joe, but he was quickly moved to commentary after that. It wasn't a very long role. I definitely want to get like tough enough Taz, like asshole Taz. I think he could be very good in this role, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in this version. It's something interesting to do for sure. Okay, now it's time for the Stadium Stampede with the Inner Circle against the Elite. I was all in on this thing as soon as they did the entrances for the Inner Circle.
So, of course, we had like drone shots, we had fireworks. Like this was like the opening of an NFL game. Cheerleaders, like the whole thing. The end zones are painted with both the Inner Circle's logos as well as the Elite's logos. And to come out,
this had to be one of the more expensive matches put together in quite some time. I mean, I would put this up against any of the cinema matches WWE has done recently.
for sure. Yeah, I mean it's one of their big hooks. Honestly, like up until this point, John, would you say the show was worth the $50?
It was a thumbs in the middle show to me at this point. Somewhat for an AEW show. Yeah, below. Like I found there was parts that certainly dragged, and from the up until this point, I think my favorite match was MJF and Jungle Boy.
I agree with you. Yeah, and so to me, it was really up to the main event to let the customer feel that they had gotten their money's worth.
So it's tremendous, the entrances here with the Inner Circle. They've got the Jaguars cheerleaders out there. The band is playing. They've got Justin Roberts, who did the voiceovers for the introductions because he's not there in Jacksonville. And it's just these elaborate entrances. They've got like the smoke machines and everything they're coming out of. So all the Inner Circle are dressed in football gear, which was just hilarious.
I don't think they were wearing pads, but like just like football jerseys, with like sort of like the puffy shoulders and everything.
I hope Jericho was wearing something when he had to take all those fucking footballs to the chest from Nick Jackson. He was just whipping them at him.
Or Sammy Guevara at the end.
Oh, everyone took some form of punishment in this match. The Elite come out. They're just in their regular wrestling attire. Matt Jackson's ribs are all taped up. I don't know how this guy felt afterwards. And this was taped like overnight. So this was done late Saturday and overnight on Saturday, and probably took hours.
Oh yeah, I would think so. A lot of work got put into it. And
they mentioned 18 cameras, They mentioned here 18 cameras that they were using.
See, I really wasn't sure if they were going to attempt to do this one live.
No way.
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad the match is way better for it. And I'm not disappointed at all the fact that it wasn't live. I'm actually grateful that it was that it wasn't, because it allowed them to have way more fun. They did pipe in the crowd audio from within the arena, which definitely added to the atmosphere.
So we have 9 people starting the match. The only one we don't have is Hangman Page, who, after the match begins, shows up on a horse, and Sammy Guevara's eyes just explode, and he just turns around, and Hangman Page chases him on his horse.
Dude, this was amazing. Like, I know that they had intended to do the horse spot with Hangman coming in on it for one of their pay-per-views earlier, but they couldn't do it because of regulation or something. Well, certainly in an empty football field with no audience members there, this really was the perfect time for them to save that whole thing for. And man, this dude came in riding a horse, looking amazing. Like, this was like the cowboy shit guy being a cowboy, doing cowboy shit.
I don't care how much trust you would have in an animal, in Hangman Page, in this whole setup. If I was Sammy Guevara, dude, I can't think of too many things that would scare me more than a spot where a horse is going to chase me, but don't worry, it won't catch you. Be like fuck, could you imagine? Like, this horse is running at you, and you're just going with the assumption that it's not going to catch me. It's not going to like run me down or anything like that. Do you know how frightening that could be?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, but you have to trust that these are well-trained animals. You have to trust that they're hopefully the handlers being around. I mean, as we know, like, I think Sammy Guevara is a pretty fearless guy.
Sammy Guevara was the star.
He was completely integral to the outcome of this. Absolutely.
He was just so much fun in this whole thing. The remaining participants, there's a ring set up at the 50-yard line, so they're all kind of going through different combinations here. There's no way I wrote 600 words here of just like spots in this whole thing, so we're not going to go through all of them here, but some highlights included the Young Bucks setting up a ladder so that Matt could do a praying moonsault off the goalpost onto Jericho and Guevara. Matt with the injured ribs doing this.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Moonsault.
Yeah, and I'm being informed by the chat room that Hangman did come out on a horse at All Out against Chris Jericho. Did he ride the thing to the ramp, though? I believe that might have been what I've heard.
No, I think he just came out on it, and then he got off the horse, and they brought it to the back, I think.
So I don't know how much riding he actually got to do. This was him riding a damn horse across a field.
They cut to Paige inside the building, so he's searching for Guevara, who has run away, and then he parks the horse, gets off, tells it to stay. We never see the horse again, and he is off to the bar. We had a long involvement with Santana, Ortiz, Omega, and Matt Hardy. This led to a spot where there was a pool, and Matt Hardy gets thrown into the pool, and they're threatening to like drown him. And first of all, did that rub you the wrong way this week? Because I did see comments about that.
Honestly, it didn't enter my mind. Because this was Matt. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like I didn't think of it either, and it's like to me it was so much of a comedy thing that I didn't think of it. But I mean, the Edge and Orton thing, I definitely thought of it during that spot. This one, I'll just say, like, if you're laying this out, I think that it would be very easy to overlook that. But it is one that this week of all weeks, drowning is probably not a term I would have wanted on the show. But that said,
remind me the Edge or Orton spot.
With like where they're by the weight equipment and choking each other.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't really fault like performers, to be honest, all that much for things like that. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I'm sure if like, you know, tasked to do these matches over, I'm sure they would have probably cut it, especially seeing the amount of backlash that they've received. But when putting these matches together, it's probably a select few people that have enough to worry about that I give them a lot of leeway. And personally, I really didn't think of it because I was just so caught up in the fun of it, because this was Matt Hardy finding a lake of reincarnation somehow in the Jacksonville arena.
And he comes up first as like the original Hardy Boys character, then into version 2.0, including a Matt Fact, which was rebranded Matter of Fact.
Yeah. This is actually V1, right? Like when he became this guy, it was actually V1.
Oh yeah. That was.
Did we ever get a version 2?
No. Well, I guess unofficially we did. We got multiple versions of him, but yeah, V1 was the 2003 character.
And this is the return of the Matt Facts, but they are now called Matter of Facts. And like Matt can hold his breath for 346 seconds. Isn't that like an actual Matt Fact they used back on SmackDown?
I have no idea.
I got to look this up, but it felt.
Can that be real?
346 seconds.
That's a long damn time, man.
How many? Isn't that like 5 minutes? Yeah, that's impossible. 3, 4, 6.
I once held my breath underwater for 60 seconds, and it was like absolute tops. And I doubt I could do that now.
Anyway, really happy to see the Matt Facts return. I thought it was used incredibly here, and the transformation gimmick is just done so well in AEW.
The end of Ortiz came when there was this giant bell that Matt rang so that Ortiz's ears were fucked, and then taped him to a wheelchair. And then Santana got sent into an ice box that got locked shut. And that was the end of Santana and Ortiz in the match. Then we go into the bar. Jake Hager pulls up a seat, sits with him. They have a drink together, and then they just brawl all over this. Hangman Page did some of the most incredible spots you'll ever see in a bar setting. Like he was doing a moonsault off the bar, flipping off the pool table. And then it ends with him taking a uranagi onto the pool table. Hager then places him onto the bar, chest down, and rams him across the bar through all of the drinks and everything that's on there. Like this is right out of a Western. And Omega is the one that shows up to help him, including a makeshift buckshot lariat where he flips over Omega's back and sends Hager into the bar with the lariat. And then they share a drink with Paige having whiskey and Omega having milk.
This whole scene was amazing. It was so badass. Like, and it felt like equal parts like cowboy film and Jackie Chan action sequence. Like Hangman Page was just incredibly agile here. Jake Hager was amazing in this. Uh,
They hit all the bottles
oh,
over his head and he wouldn't go down from it.
and then
Um,
just like
yeah, they just made like Hager like the unstoppable villain in this like
and
cowboy
then to
film.
like like bookend it with just like classic images out of a western of like Page serving a glass to Hager and then ending it with him pouring a glass of milk to Kenny. It was so well done.
Very, very good scene. Then we had Matt Jackson do a spot where he's doing the rolling Northern Light suplexes to Guevara, and they start at like the 1 yard line and they constantly cut back. They're at the 50-yard line. Then they make it to a touchdown, and Matt starts celebrating, and Rick Knox it gives him a penalty for an excessive celebration. So Knox gets super kicked. And then we just got like football humor mixed in here. Jackson DeVille, the mascot for the Jaguars, gets into Jericho's face, so he gives him the Judas effect. Then Jericho grabs Floyd and attacks Nick with it, and thought he got a 3 count, but it's a 2, and he wants to invoke the instant replay. So Aubrey Edwards has to consult into she has to check the replay, and the play on the field stands. It's a 2 count as Jericho is furious at her. And then the next big thing was placing Jericho onto a table, and this is with Matt and Nick runs down the stadium steps and then leaps off the bleachers to splash Jericho through the table, because this guy must have felt, well, my ribs feel fine. How can I make my ribs feel awful? So he did this spot. Sammy is left on the field after all these Northern Lights suplexes. He's all by himself. The sprinkler system goes off. So he's just doused with water here. And he thinks that he is the winner of the match when Hardy and Omega pull up on the golf cart. And Sammy Guevara just sells this. It's amazing.
So yeah.
They start in the golf cart, and he sprints and he just leaps into the stands, and they're surrounding him. He keeps going up, and then all of a sudden we hear this buzzing, and it's not Vanguard 1, but it's the updated version, Neo 1, the natural electronic organism. As JR says, what? And Omega catches up to Guevara. They're on this giant platform, and he drops him off the platform. The two of them plunge with a one-winged angel, crashing through these boxes at the floor, and Omega pins Guevara. This thing went approximately 45 minutes, and the Elite are the winners.
I couldn't believe this finish when I saw it. Like when you see it live, I don't think you can really grasp like the height from which they fell. But like this was not, Korakuen Hall and somebody diving off the entrance like through a table. This is not even like MSG, Jeff Hardy doing that dive off the entrance through a table. This was a fucking football arena, okay? And it looked like Kenny was falling. Kenny and Sammy Guevara were falling from like 5 stories or something like that for the biggest, tallest one-winged angel I think we'll ever see. It was a spectacular finish. I thought this was an incredible match. And some people might even hesitate to call these things matches, but like all I care about is whether or not a block of TV, pay-per-view, whatever you want to call it, content was entertaining. It was very entertaining. Honestly, John, I had a really tough time getting into anything on this show, just like given just everything going on. The match really cheered me up. It was everything I was expecting and more. Wonderfully creative, impressive physical feat, and just like consistently entertaining throughout the entire thing.
I thought this was super entertaining. It was, to me, like take your pick. I really thought the Boneyard match was phenomenal. This to me was as impressive for what they did. If you're ever a wrestling company that wants to launch, make sure your owner has a football stadium at his disposal and his willingness to allow you to use it. It was just so like this was like what they put together here and did it on. I mean, I can't imagine more than several weeks in advance. And shooting this in one night. Like, this is crazy. It was incredibly entertaining. And I mean, even at 45 minutes, I thought by the end of it, it's not like this dragged.
I absolutely did not feel the 45 minutes, and to even hear that it was that long is, you know, like this group of like, you know, Kenny, the Bucks, and you know, Paige. What's always stood up about me to them is just their incredible creativity that you would see on Being the Elite week after week. And then you throw in somebody like a Chris Jericho in there who fits in so well. Sammy Guevara, who is amazing, like as a heel here, and Ortiz and Santana and Jake Hager. Everybody had a great role to play, and everybody did a tremendous job. Some of my favorite spots were like the Hangman Horse entrance was great. The Matt Hardy transformation was awesome. The barroom brawl was awesome. The locomotion suplex thing was great. The golf cart thing, the debut of Neo, and then that one-winged angel. Like, this was, you know, like going into this show, we had wondered, oh, okay, will they like debut the Revival? Will they have to have like a major, you know, debut to close this match to like have it be satisfying? I didn't need that at all. I left the show like more than satisfied and feeling like I'd gotten $50 worth.
Yeah, I think that this would have made the show for people. I think that this was, you know, it was the certain highlight of the show, definitely. So that was Double or Nothing. I think we should open up the phone lines. We'll also go to feedback on the forum. So if you want to call in, just look up Post Wrestling, and we'll try to get to as many calls as we can, as there's quite a bit of feedback here on the forum. So let's start and look at the poll. Tonight's show gets an 8.04 for Double or Nothing.
That's actually low, honestly, but I guess if you're considering all the matches, maybe not, because usually like Dynamites get rated higher than that. But yeah, let's hear what they have to say.
Let's start with Nick from Lansing. Really fun show, top to bottom, but I just want to say that main event was everything I wanted it to be and more. An absolute blast to watch.
We got a no one from Vaughn who says, incredible show. I'm so happy for Shida winning the title. She deserves it so much. Top to bottom, a near flawless pay-per-view. 9.5 out of 10 from me. And the main event was one of the great things I've ever seen. My dad was watching along. He isn't the biggest wrestling fan, but he, along with us, was dying of laughter the entire time. So entertaining. A fantastic show.
Raphael from North Liberty. If AEW had stopped the show after Shida won the belt, I would have felt I'd gotten plenty of value for the money, but they absolutely killed it with the Moxley versus Brodie match, and then took it to a completely different level with the Elite Inner Circle. It was an amazing match. I cannot put it into words. I love wrestling, and AEW rewards me for that. 10 out of 10.
We go to...
I'm doing okay, guys. Do you mind if I don't want to bring things back down again, but
Nope.
I wanted to have just a quick word. I could tell that way, you know, it was very obvious for us watching on YouTube that you're taking this quite hard. I think, you know, I was probably as a fan of Terrace House, someone who saw her perform. Both of you, I'm sure, have had a hard week having to process all of this information. I just wanted to echo something that you said earlier on, which is just to give a little insight. I'm not a mental health professional by any stretch of the imagination, but I volunteer for a helpline. You probably have something similar in Canada. There's organizations here called Samaritans and so on, and it's just, you know, you take some training days and you do some role plays, and you're really just trying to signpost people. And you know, it's what I really wanted to say just on this was to echo and amplify something you said, Wade, which is that you shouldn't rush to apportion blame to one person or even one section of the things that can contribute here. You know, you don't know what's going on with people. I've spoken to people on the phone who will tell me, young people, that they're the life and soul of the party. Their friends don't have a clue there's anything going on. So you don't know what's going on with pre-existing mental health issues. You don't know what's going on with people's support network. There's cultural issues. There's family issues, including rejection, sometimes for LGBT kids and things like that. Struggles with religion. There's any numbers here, so it's not just social media bullying. Of course, that's reprehensible and should not happen. It's not just sudden fame, which can get to people too on reality TV. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to, it was obvious from the beginning of the show, and thanks, of course, to WH for the sort of on-site insight into what is going on in the media in Japan. But it was. If anything, I sort of felt it quite hard and myself, even because I've spoken to people who seem fine, and then sometimes you hear something terrible has happened, and it's bad,
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just the real point of phoning was to say what you said already way at the beginning, which is don't rush to judgment on these things. Don't blame the TV channel. Don't blame just Twitter. It's not as simple as that. It's a complex matter.
Appreciate that very much, Neil. I appreciate your perspective, and no matter where you live in your part of the world, like I certainly urge you to look up some of these phone lines that are available to help you. And I would actually, like, around this time, encourage everybody to just like call a friend and just check up if not even if you're suspicious, but if you just haven't talked to somebody for a while. Sometimes just talking it really helps. So thank you, Neil.
Definitely, and I hope that both of you are okay, because you've had to delve into this as part of your job, and that can have an effect too.
For sure, appreciate it. Did you watch the pay-per-view tonight?
I did, yeah. It's an awkward transition, but to do the sort of Michael Cole switching gears, the Stadium Stampede stole the show far and away. I think it was, for me anyway, better than either the Boneyard match, and even I don't know what. I'd be interested to hear what you think. Way it topped the Firefly Funhouse for me as well, just for sheer creativity and entertainment. And again, the 45-minute marks. It's surprising to hear that it went that long, because by that point in the pay-per-view, I'm obviously a bit ahead in the time zone. I was getting tired, and I thought, there are whispers on Twitter that this was pre-recorded, and they were very, very pleased with it. So I'm going to stay awake and watch it, and I'm really glad I did, because as you said, it was a real cheering up moment. There was so much there that was good, just a hoot. Even did you mention even just little things like the moment where Jericho has the cone on his head again and he's just laughing maniacally, or when they do the line painting over his crotch, and all of the moments that you mentioned as well. I just thought it was terrific.
Thank you so much, Neil. Really appreciate the call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Neil.
you.
Yeah, Neil asked me.
One other note here from this is from Dave Meltzer, who wrote that they had a press conference, I guess, after the show. They will have a second Fyter Fest show. The date will be announced this Wednesday. Moxley versus Brian Cage in the main event of that show.
Interesting. Okay. Fyter Fest.
And the original plan was to do Fyter Fest in London, but everything's being done in Jacksonville for the time being, so I would assume that's where the show would be. But
free show or paid?
Well, last year it was paid. I imagine. I imagine it'd be same, right?
$10 or something, like not 50. But okay, interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
But they'll announce the date Wednesday.
I preferred the Firefly Funhouse match still, but I mean I think both are very incredibly creative and probably my two favorite things of this entire empty arena era. Just a lot of unique thought put into production. This one was certainly more physical, was an actual, wrestling match, if you even want to call it that. But they're both great. Hansi, you're on the line.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Before I give you my thoughts, I just wanted to say RIP to Hana. I'm not gonna pretend I'm a big fan. I don't know much about her. But when these situations happen, and again, I'm not trying to make it about me, but when I see someone going through that, and then people are wondering how this could happen, right? This is what and again, I'm someone that should distance myself from social media. Unfortunately, I'm addicted, and I regret it. I, write in a journal to like get my thoughts out because I have really irrational thoughts, especially from the show that I came from, which has a very vile fan base, much like wrestling in a sense. And when you're kind of like, a known character on that show, you're kind of harassed with a bunch of racist and horrible things. And then you kind of are driven to saying like fucked up things to people because you're trying to fight back. And I regret, and I go on different platforms where I see people who are influenced by Opie and Anthony or Howard Stern, whether it be Periscope or YouTube, who are kind of going through that same type of thing where they're trying to promote more drama. And I try to tell them that, listen, it seems fun right now. You'll get more viewers when you do these fights, but I'm telling you, at the detriment, if you're not mentally capable, you're gonna lose your mind. So I just, if anyone's going through mental stuff, try to write in a journal to get your thoughts out, whether they are rational or not. Because, you know what I mean? Sometimes you might feel really irrational. You might say some fucked up things, but like you need to express yourself. So write in a journal if you can. It'll help you out. As far as the pay-per-view goes, sorry for dampening the mood.
No, not at all. We appreciate it.
It's really apprecited.
Yeah, and I thought the whole pay-per-view was good, other than two matches, whether it be Dustin and Spears. I liked, again, I'm one of the guys that has been kind of like, hey, MJF is kind of like a 4chan troll promo kind of guy. He can't really wrestle that good. This match made me a fan. Respectively, both of the best performances in the company this far. And you guys said enough about the main event. It was a very fun main event. I was laughing my ass off. I don't know if you guys laughed at this, but the referee in Archer versus Cody, he was so animated. It was like he was being given like, oh, you're going to be saying some lines. Like, oh, am I going to be saying some lines, huh? So, like, he was so animated during the match. I was, like, laughing my ass off. I enjoyed that match, too, but...
It was Bryce.
Oh, okay.
You gotta watch the Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan.
Oh, for sure. Okay, for sure. But yeah, but overall, Brian Cage being the surprise, I thought that's amazing, and I love Taz pairing. But overall, guys, I love the pay-per-view, and thank you for taking my call. And this is why I love your. This is why I gravitate towards you guys and I thank you guys for not being hosts who try to get a rile out of me. I know that's fun. I know Crazy Handsy is like the funniest type of shit. I'll admit I laugh at that shit too sometimes. But at least I feel on this show and on Agnew's show, you guys at least treat me like human beings, which I don't feel like on other shows. And I appreciate you guys for that. That's why I love your fucking show. Take it easy, guys.
Appreciate it, Hansi.
Thanks very much, Hansi. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I mean, Hansi treats us with respect. Like he's always like, very careful about not going overboard with his time. So of course, like what reason would we have to do any different? So that goes for all our callers. So anyway, anything else, John?
No. Let's do a few more pieces of
Okay,
feedback.
and if you want to call in, phone lines are open. I know, Paul, you've been trying to get in, so please keep calling. Let's go to Sean from Toronto, who says, I would describe the main show as being just about as good a pay-per-view AEW could put on. Give me 1 second here. Let me just mute you for 1 second, Paul. Let me just finish this. He goes, about as good a pay-per-view AEW could put on in these circumstances, and there were no matches that dragged for me. However, the Stadium Stampede brought things up to a new level and delivered what I would describe as pure Looney Tunes in a football stadium. While these types of cinematic matches will probably get old fast, this was probably way more entertaining than what WWE pulled off, despite the glossy production. That said, the jump off the goalpost and the final one-winged angel can be interpreted as unnecessary stunts, especially during the same week that Owen Hart documentary aired. However, I was still highly entertained. Any comment on that, John?
I mean, I see them as, very different. There's a danger level, of course. I mean, the final stunt, I mean, it's very much protected for, as safe a fall as you could have. Yes, there is that danger. I really don't equate the two, though.
I feel like at some point it's like, man, it really sucks because like there's so much tragedy in wrestling, and this stuff is going to get brought up, especially this week. Where's that line of sensitivity? And that's going to be different for everybody. For some people, they get uncomfortable even, seeing a drop. Some people might, it was the Matt Hardy thing. Where do we draw the line to say, like, to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and that, nobody feels, I don't know, like they're being offended by it, or it's going to be different for everybody, and I'll just say that for a producer of like content, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find out where everybody's line is and to make sure that everybody is okay. So
And sometimes like people are not going to necessarily think of it, like the pool segment or the Edge and Orton thing. Like maybe they didn't put 2 and 2 together. Like not everyone is going to have that reference point of that level of detail. I can tell you they
probably didn't put 2 and 2 together, especially in the case of like Edge and Orton or any of these, because if they did, they probably wouldn't do it.
Like that is going to happen sometimes, and it can come off poorly, and sometimes it's okay. We made an error. We made an error. That's sometimes that is going to happen, but you're right. Like everyone's line is going to be different and things are going to interpret differently. If like there are going to be dangerous stunts in wrestling, and there was no shortage of them on tonight's show, from the ladder match throughout the whole stadium match. Like that is a staple of professional wrestling, is stunts, and some that the margin for error is very small. So yeah.
Let's go to the phone lines. Paul, please unmute yourself. Thank you for waiting and trying to get on for quite a while. If you can find that mute button, Paul, the world is waiting. Hopefully, if you can't find it, then I guess we shall move on with the feedback, John.
Okay, I'm going to skip down a few. Let's go to Jay in Colorado. He says the casino ladder match was insane. I was really happy with the debut of Brian Cage. Match between the Elite and Inner Circle was exactly what I was hoping for it to be, and more. I loved every second of it, especially Matt Hardy cycling through different versions of himself and the bit at the bar. Butcher and the Blade are looking interesting these days. I dig the Butcher Ziggy Stardust shirt. Don't know if there's some kind of change coming, but I like it. My only complaint is the entire show was too long. I feel that we could have done without the Dustin Spears match, as well as Statlander versus Ford, and Cody versus Archer could have been 5 minutes less at least. I don't understand why we had a lengthy review segment before the main event. Great show. I was just ready for it to move at certain points.
Okay, we got a Doug from Tupton Classic. I think he means old Tupton instead of a new Tupton. Okay, Tupton Classic. How do I rate the Stadium Stampede? 7 stars on Grapple. I was in total hysterics for much of the presentation. They absolutely nailed it. It may not exactly have been the most serious match, but it doesn't matter one bit. It wasn't meant to be. It was a payoff, and it actually paid off. Much of the rest of the card was somewhat underwhelming, but still oddly enjoyable. I really enjoyed Cody versus Archer, MJF versus Jungle Boy, and Nyla versus Shida. The latter match was an absolute clusterfuck, and I wasn't expecting it as I felt I should. Did Darby actually injure his knee? That may have thrown everybody off, but Cage's arrival was great and he looked impressive. I mean, did you get the sense that Darby was legitimately hurt at all in the match?
I mean, he came back in the match and was involved. I just think it was, just shuffling from guy to guy. There was no one there that was like a constant for the 28 minutes or anything like that. It was like everyone kind of took intervals, and that was a big spot. He should have been out of it. I mean, it's very possible he could have hurt himself. Like there's not a very safe way to take that. How serious? I mean, he did come back later in the match, and I don't know.
Sean Spears is a very good sport, and Penelope Ford is probably worthy of a greater push as the top player. I gave it a 7 overall, as there was just something missing for most of the show. But I suspect it may have simply been a full crowd to react to spots and false finishes. Good, not great. R.I.P. Hana Kimura, though Excalibur was clearly having trouble getting the sentiment out in his address, his words need to be heard by all.
Okay, let's go to Alexander from Portland. Utterly fantastic show. It felt like every competitor was told to have the show-stealing match, and most of them were viable contenders. The crowd really helped the thing feel livelier and more exciting, especially Big Swole. Big Swole was awesome in the crowd. We didn't mention that.
She was. Yes, she was.
She was really great. The amount of talent in the ladder match was insane. Between Cage's dominant debut to Hangman drinking a whiskey and milk to Shida's winning streak earning her a championship, it's hard to pick a favorite moment from tonight. AEW has nailed down the presentation and storytelling in the empty arena settings. Was the Stadium Stampede match the end of the Elite Inner Circle feud?
I can't imagine it. I mean, this was not necessarily that definitive, and I feel like that's a feud that'll probably go on for quite a while. They still have blood and guts to do, don't they?
Yeah, but this could be the cool, go away from it for a while now and then revisit it at a time when you can do the blood and guts, which months and months down the road. But it's also very difficult when you're talking about 5 of your top heels and 5 of your top baby faces and not any kind of interaction. Like there should be some, like Santana and Ortiz coming for revenge, and something with Hager and Page. Like, you should at least get a match out of Hager and Page out of this.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be hard not to mix them at all. But in terms of like having, you may want to cool it off a little, and some people can go in different directions, but I think you'll still have that rivalry underlying the theme of the show.
We got Alex from Portland who says, an utterly fantastic show. Felt like every...
That's the one I just read.
Okay, we go to Josh from Vietnam who says, Brian Cage winning was a pleasant surprise, and I hope Darby is entering into the program with him and Taz. That feud has the potential for some crazy matches, although I feel like Orange Cassidy's booking is a little puzzling, and thus the reaction from the announcers toward him very heelish. So glad that Shida won the title, very deserving, because I feel like she has been the number one face in the division ever since Riho lost the belt. Now give me my Shida Baker feud. Cody winning was surprising, but understandable. He has lost so many big pay-per-view matches before, he needs a big win like this to reinforce and justify his position in the in the rankings. Also, Archer has been quite dominating. I think he will be able to take the loss and bounce back. The main event was chaotic and full of moments, most of it good. The Incarnation pool, the brawl in the bar. I can't imagine getting slammed into a pool table was very good for your spine. However, I feel the match was overall a bit too long, and as a result, was sometimes all over the place. I think it could benefit from being 5 to 7 minutes shorter and would have delivered the same result.
Let's do the last two here. David from Bonn writes, I might have a different opinion than the majority. I found a lot of the pacing of the matches on the undercard slow and underwhelming. I did enjoy the MJF Jungle Boy match and the women's title match, though it also went a bit long. The latter match was decent. It had some crazy spots, and it's great to see Brian Cage in AEW. I don't know if it hindered my opinion, but I watched the show with my brother, who fell asleep during the Moxley Brodie Lee match. Either it was that or the lack of fans, but something definitely hurt my opinion of some of these matches. That said, the main event was amazing, more than made up for me. It was hilarious, and I was thoroughly entertained. 7.5 out of 10. Rest in peace, Hana Kimura. I don't think that's a wild take at all on this show. It's kind of how I felt about it. It was I loved the MJF Jungle Boy match, and I think that there was, again, up until the stadium match, I would go thumbs in the middle on this show. But I think that those final 45 minutes really put this show over the top. There was nothing terrible on this show, but I thought it was. It did drag to me at points, certainly.
Yeah, like to me, a big difference between the two matches that I think are receiving positive reviews and some of the other ones are that they managed to just hold your attention throughout the entire thing. At least for me, that was MJF and Jungle Boy, and certainly the main event. But some of these other matches just felt like incredibly, I would say, flat and really similar throughout the entire thing, and some of them going as long as like 21 minutes. So that to me was like a big difference. And I don't know how that's fixed, other than like having great matches or having shorter matches. But it's going to be a varying degree of, I think, reaction. Let's try one more time here. Paul, are you present?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We got you. Awesome.
All right, great. Yeah, so I thought the show was okay, when I was, throughout the night. I'm really disappointed as someone who's like a big Ty Dillinger fan. I have no idea what Sean Spears is doing or what his character was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like he should just be on his own and be a heel and be, messing with people. I didn't know what the whole game show host thing was all about or what he was trying to do. But when that main event came around, I think like everyone else, I absolutely loved it. One of the great things about All Elite, I was not familiar with Sammy Guevara at all, and now he's my favorite wrestler in the entire company, and I thought he, really shined tonight. And just real quick, and I'll let you guys go, my favorite spot was when Aubrey Edwards had to review a pin like an NFL referee, and Jericho just looks at her and goes, you're a real piece of shit. And I don't know why, but that just made me laugh. But overall, that's my match of the year so far. I thought it was very enjoyable.
Awesome. Wow. It was a tremendous, presentation. It was, lots of great moments in that. And the replay thing, they had some like great comedy mixed in throughout, but it was never, to me, dominated by comedy either.
Yeah, I really, especially in this time with the empty arenas, I think this is a time for creativity, and I think when we do get back to normal, I really do, like, for instance, I thought the Shotzi Blackheart promo on NXT was terrible, and I've been kind of razzing Brady about it, but like, I do at least like when they make that attempt. Let's try doing something different. Let's try and, even with like the basketball and the axe throwing, I don't think the execution has been great, but I think there's an idea there, and I'd like to see for character building. But yeah, thanks for taking my call, guys. And yeah, the main event was great.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Did you see the Shotzi Blackheart thing?
I did.
What did you think?
The
fact that we're even talking about it, like on a show that had so much other things, I think I would feel like they would be pretty happy about it. It was a weird, like, delivery, very unique. I mean, I would say to me very much akin to like 2000s MTV, like teen mom reality show type of like talking. If you ever seen those
like they were obviously going for it to be drastically over the top and silly. That's, I mean, Christ, like we're using a real tank for this segment. I mean, you're starting already at kind of the absurd. So the promo almost matched like the absurdity level. So, I mean, to me, I've never been a fan of that like entrance of hers to begin with. So the promo kind of just perfectly puts it all in alignment. We'll see where they go with it. I mean, it was a totally bizarre segment to watch on Wednesday.
All right. Let's finish off here with Ken. And apologies, we can't get to everybody's feedback. We're already past 2 hours, unfortunately. So, please tell us in the feedback thread. I guess you've already done that. Go and read the feedback thread if you're curious. Ken says, I thought tonight was a good show. Match of the night for me was MJF versus Jungle Boy. The storytelling was fantastic, and both wrestlers being equal to one another until MJF resorts to heel tactics. It was great, and another good example of MJF being more than a good talker. He's fantastic in the ring, and Jungle Boy continues to impress me. The TNT title match was just okay. I was confused about how we needed to have the second referee come in to throw out Arn Anderson. Seemed like too much booking to me. Just have the ref in the match, catch him in the act, and throw out both managers. Maybe had it been on an episode of Dynamite instead of a pay-per-view, I would have enjoyed it more. But I just felt empty after the match, even though I thought there wasn't anything wrong with the in-ring action. Perhaps I'm just being too picky. The only other negative I had was the Spears and Dustin match. I think had it been on the pre-show instead of the good tag match between Best Friends and Private Party, then it wouldn't be an issue for me. Too much like WWE for my taste.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. That was a pre-show match, and it was in the middle of the show. It was short. It was 4 minutes, so it's like you can't get too bent out of shape over it, but it was, not one of the highlights of the show. But there were many of them from Double or Nothing. I think overall a pretty positive feedback to the show. Because
of primarily that main event,
Mm-hmm.
So...
I think that the main event, I think Hikaru Shida winning and MJF Jungle Boy, I think those were the three big positives on the show for most.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We'll see how they follow up. I mean, when is Fyter Fest?
Well, they're going to announce Wednesday when it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So we'll find out a date on Wednesday. And you're going to be back on Sunday night.
Actually, I forgot to. I don't think we'll be doing it this weekend. I think, I don't know, reality shows is just not something I really want to watch, like, this weekend. I think Pauline and I will be back next weekend for Total Recall. But in the meantime, like, listen to a whole lot of other things that are out there right now. And, John, you actually have an interview coming out Sunday night, don't you?
That's right. I'm going to be chatting with Jonathan Snowden. He's the author of the new book on Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man. It just came out. It's a really fascinating book. It's the most detailed research book on Ken Shamrock ever. And there's a lot out on Ken, but you'll learn so much in this book. So, I'm chatting with Jonathan Snowden about that. He has written a number of books, Total MMA, Shooters, the MMA Encyclopedia as well. So this is a book I definitely recommend. So that interview will be up, late Sunday night, early Monday morning for everyone to check out. And then Wai and I will be back Monday night with Rewind to Raw. So thanks to everybody tuning in. If you are a Double Ice Cap or Espresso member, if you tuned in live, we do these after each pay-per-view, which the next one will be after the greatest match of all time. We're going to be talking after the
greatest wrestling match ever.
Yes, the greatest wrestling match ever after Backlash on June 14th.
Yes. So you can't miss that one.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we'll speak with you Monday following Raw.